He's Derek.
Category is shady. Woo, that's right, girl.
She's Romaine.
I am a horny lesbian. I like to have sex. If I was single, I'd be having sex.
This is Derek and Romaine.
2.0, bitches. Category is game shows.
That's right.
I love it when we're in sync.
We are. Derek here along with Romaine, and we are in the game shows, that is, on today's episode. Coming up in a few minutes, we are going to be talking to the author of the brand new book, Game Show Confidential, Bose Hadley, who has been with us before. This is his 29th book. It's crazy. But we will be talking to him about that in just a few moments. But, you know, Romaine, you and I both grew up with any number of game shows, and we still watch game shows.
Yeah.
I obviously am a big fan of Jeopardy, but, you know, Survivor is a game show.
Mm-hmm. And we obviously watch that, and we love that.
And even in a way, The Bachelor and The Bachelorette is a game show.
All of them are. All these reality things where there's a prize or something like that, they are all technically considered game shows, which, I mean, makes them kind of fun, I think. But, yeah. Do you have so your favorite game show, what is it?
Well, Jeopardy, I love Jeopardy.
Yeah.
And what I like about Jeopardy is I think the 3-contestant format makes the game more exciting.
Sure.
Because, you know, sometimes it really becomes a 2-person race where one person just can't get in on the buzzer and they keep answering wrong, whatever. Sometimes somebody really craps out on the show. But frequently, especially more recently, they've been trying to do more of these sort of all-star reunion shows and everything, where you really get 3 very well-matched contestants, and it makes the game very exciting.
Sure.
And you have to be really smart to get on Jeopardy. I have a lot of friends who auditioned for years and never got on the show, who are much smarter than I am. And and I think it isn't just how smart you are. You also have to be sort of good in the moment and not be flummoxed by being on TV and the lights and the cameras and the pace of it and everything. And I actually think that I could answer the questions on Jeopardy just fine, but I think the playing the game show part, I think I'd be very bad at. I think I would probably I think I could get on Jeopardy if I really auditioned a lot. I think I could get on Jeopardy, but I think that the whole experience of it would be too panic inducing, and I would be one of the people who flames out on the show. Because remember, I did the online test, and the first question when the online test popped up was about the Supreme Court, and I'm a super
everything about the Supreme Court. Yeah,
and
you're a nerd.
I immediately blanked.
Oh no.
Yeah, which, by the way, if I had just been watching at home, laying on the couch, would have been totally fine. It would have had the answer like that. But because it was the time test and I wanted to be on Jeopardy, the pressure was too great, completely could not remember anything. Yeah, total disaster. And I have not auditioned for Jeopardy, done the online test since, because I'm now so in a panic about it.
Wow, okay.
But a lot of the people who do Jeopardy now, they participate in bar trivia and quiz bowls and that kind of thing.
Right.
And I think that, our friend, Adam from Sissytown, Adam from Scruffytown,
right?
He does a lot of this kind of bar trivia stuff and everything. And that is good preparation, because then you're used to being competitive and in the moment and ringing in and that kind of thing. So I think it hones your skills and builds your confidence there. Maybe I should do that.
Maybe.
Now, what about you, Romaine? What is your game show enthusiasm?
I used to love the Whammy show when I was a kid.
Press your luck.
Yeah,
no whammies.
I thought that was a really fun show, and the whammies made me giggle. But I have to say, the show I think I would be so good at, and I don't even know the name of it. I just know how the game works. It's the one where you have 2 people and they're facing each other, and one gets like a word, and then they have to give other words without saying the word to get the person to guess it.
You're talking about Password or the Pyramid?
Yeah. I think I would be so fucking good at that game. And I can't explain to you how, but I know I am good at that game. I'm so good at giving clues like that. I'm better at giving the clues than guessing the clues, but I'm really fucking good at giving the clues. Like, I'm really good at that stuff. I know exactly the right words to pick to get people to guess what I want them to guess. So I think I'd be really good at that. And I remember Rosie was really good at that. Like when she would be like a celebrity
when
guest.
She would be on the pyramid.
Yeah. Her, and I think Ross Matthews was also really good at it. I think if I was in like that celebrity role where you have to give all the clues, I'm telling you, the person I helped would win all the money. That's how confident I am. And I don't feign confidence unless I really think I could do it. But yeah, I think I'd kill it on that show.
Now, as a kid, I really liked Match Game. I would watch Match Game because it would be on in the afternoon when I came home from school. So I would watch Match Game a lot. But my guilty pleasure game show, Sale of the Century.
I don't remember that show.
Oh my God. It was a dumb show. I loved it. But one of the things, so they would have regular sort of trivia questions and everything. But then they would have you would earn money. And then they would suddenly stop the game and you would have the option of like spending your money on a prize. Like the door would open and they would show you a prize and it would be valued at whatever, $25 or something.
Right.
And so then you would spend $25 of your dollars on that, or you could keep going and see if you earned enough money that you could buy something else later on or whatever. Right. Anyway. And then sometimes they would discount the price. Like if you first said no, sometimes they would drop the price by like $10 or something, right? Anyway, but they had a thing where they would have a thing where you had to guess a person from history. And they would start with a little information about them, and then you had to ring in when you knew who the person was. And that was my favorite part of the show.
Interesting. Okay.
Because it was always, because it would say, I was born on a farm in Lexington, Kentucky. And growing up, my favorite thing was whatever, right? They would give you little clues, and some of them were pretty obscure. But as time went on, it became less obscure. And then, and I became the 14th president of the United States or something, right? And my wife's name was whatever, right?
Right.
So they would start to give you enough information that you would know who it was. And that was my favorite part of the show, because to see if I could figure it out before the contestants could ring in who the person was. Yeah.
That would be fun. I could see how that is your kind of jam.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. We like very different kind of game shows.
We do, but we're also very different people. But I think that this is part of the thing with game shows is that they... even big hits, because Jeopardy is a huge hit, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially with young people, it's a very big hit.
Which I find really fascinating.
Yeah. But, Wheel of Fortune is still a massive hit. And I don't even understand how it's still on the air, because how do they still have phrases?
Right.
I mean, didn't we run through every single phrase that was possible?
I would think so.
Yeah, you would think. But... some of these game shows, it gets harder as time goes on. Because, you think about a show like Name That Tune.
Right.
Which, back when it started, a lot of people grew up with, say, a piano in the house and sheet music. And there were certain standards that generationally people
Everybody knew. Yeah.
Right. And you could give information about the song, and then people could figure out what the song was. But... people are not growing up with that kind of a, songbook situation anymore.
It's
Pop
true.
music is constantly changing, and it would be much harder now to do a Name That Tune that could reach people in any kind of a multi-generational way.
Yeah, because old people don't know Taylor Swift.
Right.
They don't know to Shake It Off.
Yeah, and younger people don't know anything older than...
Although you'd be surprised. I got to be honest. Some of the things that Romy chooses to listen to is kind of shocking. Like, for instance, Romy loves Janis Joplin. I didn't even know Romy knew who she was.
Jackie Jorp Chomp.
And, Romy listens to music I listened to as a kid. I find it kind of fascinating what Romy chooses to listen to. She listens to a lot of modern, today's stuff, but she also listens to quite a bit of older stuff.
Well, there is also access.
Yeah.
There didn't used to be access. And a lot of current artists, one of the hot things in music right now is very directly and aggressively sampling past hit songs.
Yeah, true.
Because, just playing the hook from a past hit at the beginning of your new song, when people hear it, their first thought is, oh, I know this song, but it's a new song. But so many current hit songs have some kind of incorporation of a hook of a famous past song.
True.
And that also will encourage younger people to check out the previous song.
Right. Yeah. No, you're
So,
right about that. You're right about
There you
that.
go.
Interesting.
I know. Well, it gets even more interesting when we talk to Bose Hadley, because he has all the scoop on some of your favorite game shows of the past and present in his Game Show Confidential. That book is available now everywhere fine books are sold. And Bose Hadley is available right here on Derek and Romaine.
Stay tuned for more Derek and Romaine.
Derek, I know I don't sleep with men, but I sleep with women. And I know that the thing I love the most is a very confident sexual partner. And I know there's a lot of issues for guys out there, right? Maybe things don't perform the way you want them to or whatever. Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it just be swell if you had a little bit of extra help that could maybe help you go a couple extra rounds, give you that little boost of confidence? Luckily, for guys like you, Derek, I have the answer. Yes, I do. Blue Chew.
That's right. And you can try Blue Chew for yourself at BlueChew.com. Use our promo code DNR. You'll get your first month free. You just pay $5 for shipping, and it couldn't be easier or more convenient. You just go to BlueChew.com, get all set up. They connect you with a licensed medical professional. You talk to them about yourself, what your needs are, because the different chewables that they have are right for different situations. So you'll talk to them. They'll discuss with you what might be right for you. You'll get all set up, and it ships right to your door discreetly and conveniently. Don't have to wait in line at a pharmacy.
I know.
You don't have to talk to your own doctor about it. It's easy and convenient. And with promo code DNR, you can try it for just $5 shipping.
Yeah, sex should be enjoyable and fun, and you should be both fun for you and for your partner. And now you can deliver that with Blue Chew. So again, you go to BlueChew.com. And when you get to the little checkout area, you enter the code DNR. You're just going to pay $5 for shipping. Again, BlueChew.com. That code is DNR, and you're going to receive your first month free. You can't beat it.
That's right, for just the $5 shipping. So BlueChew.com, that's BlueChew.com. Get signed up, get connected, and get going with Blue Chew.
Let's get it on.
DNR 2.0.
Derek here along with Romaine, and joining us now by phone, it is Bose Hadley, author of Game Show Confidential. It's available as of May 1st everywhere fine books are sold, and it joins the pantheon of books that he has written over the years.
So many books.
So many books, including Hollywood.
29.
Wow.
29 books. That is...
wild. I wrote one book, and that was a lot.
And she
It
barely
takes
wrote it.
time. Yes. Why I wrote it? Well, for one thing, I was on Jeopardy, finally, and I won. So the publisher said, would you like to do a biography of Alex Trebek, because his terminal cancer diagnosis had just been announced. And I politely said no. But then that led to the idea, what about a book on game show hosts, which led to, well, what about game shows, period, from day one till now? And I had no idea it would be so interesting and so much gay content.
Sure. Although I have to start by saying, you basically lived Derek's dream. You got to be on Jeopardy. He has dreamed about it for years and has not had that opportunity. So what advice would you give him?
Well, if you're better off than I was, because I lived in Beverly Hills all the times. I started auditioning in 1986. I got on in 1998. So if you're from the LA area, they want the whole country represented. And then if you're even from the LA area, they don't necessarily want just people from Beverly Hills especially. So it took all that time. And, another thing, I started wondering after the 7th or 8th year, could this be homophobia? But that's impossible to prove. Well, anyway, I finally did get on, and I won big, and it was quite an experience. And there's no time to get nervous because it just zooms right along until Final Jeopardy. Then you're trying to figure out, what do I bet, how much, so I don't end up in third place. So.
But more recently, there have been quite a number of LGBTQ champions on Jeopardy. In a way, that has been a big part of Jeopardy's more recent story among their mega champs.
Yes, well, in general, the whole thing, it used to be the hosts of game shows were all white men, officially heterosexual. They wouldn't allow women. I have a chapter in the book, one of the 24 is titled, She Hosts Too. Betty White was tapped by Mark Goodson, Bill Todman in the 60s to host their latest new show. ABC said no female host because we're afraid no female viewers will tune in, which is ridiculous.
What?
But I know, exactly. I mean, the whole chapter, it's amazing, the discrimination against women. But eventually they started including females, people of color, and finally gay people, because you have to look back to how many shows required husband and wife contestants. And that was very unfair, but that was the rule. Or male-female, male-female. Is she your girlfriend? Is she your fiancé? It's amazing, but they got away with it, of course.
Yeah, that they're just women were not able to just be a woman on a show, except of course, one of the what you list as one of the worst game shows, Queen for a Day, which was a brutal show that honestly would fit in really well in our modern era, where women went on TV and told their terrible, sad sob stories of how awful their lives were, and then they were given a refrigerator if their life was the worst. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God, that's horrible.
It was today it would never go because it would be considered totally bad taste, but this was a huge hit show in the 50s and 60s, and the reason I don't have it, the final chapter is the 21 worst shows. It's not in there. It's in a separate chapter on the neediest shows because it did a lot of good for a lot of women, even though here you have 4 women in desperate straits, and one was crowned queen for a day, but that woman was helped a lot, like she might have a crippled child, or she couldn't afford this or that, or she had a boy in an iron lung was one of them. All kinds of terrible things. And I remember my mother would tune into it, and I think, this is a sad show. Why are we watching this? Of course, I was a little child. But now you look back and you think, how was this so popular? But you have to remember, America was not always as affluent as it is today. And even today, look at the homelessness.
Right. But even then, I think that a lot of the appeal of the show was, if I'm down about how hard my life is, there are people out there who have much worse circumstances. So it makes me feel better about myself. But then I also feel like I'm helping somebody poorer than I am by watching this show and seeing them, get a refrigerator. But, more recently, there was the home makeover show where they would completely gut renovate houses for people who were very poor and had disabled children and awful circumstances. And that was a huge hit on ABC. So, I mean, there is still a space for that kind of thing. And even the home renovation shows on HGTV frequently have a, pay it back, to this person who is deserving but not of means.
It depends how it's done, too, because when you read about Queen for a Day, it was done in such a sexist, patronizing way. The host was a guy named Jack Bailey, and he would open the show every time by yelling into the camera, how would you like to be queen for a day? And, of course, the average viewer would think, heaven forbid. But, if it's done with more taste and restraint and without demeaning the poor people who are on the show, it can be very popular. Yeah, you're right.
Now, one of the things that you dig into is a big part of the origin of Jeopardy and the reason that Jeopardy answers are in the form of a question. And this is the quiz show scandals of the 1950s.
Yes, there's a whole chapter titled Rigged, and if you remember, there was a movie Robert Redford directed called Quiz Show about that. And one of the worst examples, almost every chapter has a sidebar, and one of them is on Dr. Joyce Brothers. Now, she was a very young psychologist, and her family were struggling. Her husband was a medical doctor, and she got onto the $64,000 question, which was sponsored by Revlon. Those were the days, and this was not good, when one company sponsored a show, so they could pretty much dictate what happened and didn't happen on the show.
Oh, no.
And Charles Revson, the horrible founder and director of Revlon for 50 years, hated Dr. Joyce Brothers because she would not wear makeup. And so he felt, well, she's ruining my show. She's taking all the glamour out of it. Well, so he told the people who made up the questions, sabotage her, get rid of, and he even said, and she quoted him, get rid of the bitch, which in those days, very strong language.
Mm-hmm.
But she had a photographic memory, so she not only won the $64,000 question, the first woman and the second person to win, she won again $64,000 because it was the first game show to have a spin-off. And you have to remember that at the time when she did this, in the mid-50s, the average American family earned less than $6,000 for the year. Yeah.
So that was like making her a millionaire.
Well, that's how she set up her husband in medical practice.
Wow.
Because they had been struggling to find a place to live even. And her hope when she got on the show was that she could win a Cadillac and then sell it for the money they needed. But she won $128,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That was definitely life-changing money then. But
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. She became a national figure.
Yeah. But with these quiz show scandals, in particular 21, where the answers were given to a contestant on the show, that forced Congress to change the laws because there really were no laws governing these game shows.
You know, in the early 50s, the FCC tried to ban game shows from television, but then in 54, the Supreme Court disagreed and said game shows could continue. But 4 years later came all these scandals, which all the networks and all the shows denied that anything was wrong, but they were feeding answers to the people they preferred. And again, there was a lot of bigotry in the kind of person they preferred to be the winner and that they thought would draw more viewers, more attractive people, more waspy people, etc.
What?
Oh, yeah.
This is crazy. I didn't know any of this.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
They basically cheated the whole time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, this was
they
the
had
big
a
part about.
congressional investigation that was
Yeah.
watched as closely as Watergate was in the 70s. And one of the actors or contestants on a show was Patty Duke, who was a child at the time, and she had been coached to lie. And so when she was asked in Congress, was there anything wrong? Were you given answers? She said no. And this particular congressman, he had a way with children or something. He stared at her. He stared her down, said, Patty, have you been telling the truth? And she broke down in tears and said no, and admitted that adults had coached her to lie about everything.
Yeah. This
That's
was
crazy.
this was a huge scandal because I think the American public
Yeah.
had a lot of trust
Mm-hmm.
in what was coming through their television into their home.
Right.
And we may see that
Yeah.
yeah, we may see that now as naive, but when you think about sort of the gravity that Walter Cronkite or Edward R. Murrow had as newscasters, this was how much Americans really believed what they were being told on television.
Oh, definitely. And,
and this,
there was such naivete. Not only
Yeah.
they felt betrayed, but then for years after, the ratings of all game shows plummeted. Many of them were, of course, discontinued, but they didn't become popular again until well into the 60s when you had new shows and, of course, laws governing how they were run to reassure the public they weren't being duped.
yeah. But this was how
That's wild.
Jeopardy came to be.
Yes, that's right, because the wife of Merv Griffin, now Merv Griffin, as we all know now, was gay, but he was married, and his wife said at some point, you know, why can't they, instead of giving the answers to a question, give the questions to an answer, And he was horrified by the thought because he thought, well, back to the rigged, to the scandals. And she said, no, think about it. And one example she gave the address, something like 44 Wistful Vista Drive. That's the answer. So then he gives the question, what is the address of Fibber, McGee, and Molly, which was a super popular radio show? And so that started Jeopardy. And he had been a game show host. Merv Griffin, for that matter, you mentioned Walter Cronkite. He was a game show host for a time. For 10 years, Mike Wallace of 60 Minutes was a game show host. It's amazing who's hosted shows. So anyway, then Merv Griffin founded his company, and Jeopardy was a huge hit. And later, a pricing show that became The Price is Right. Or rather, not him for that. It was also... Wheel of Fortune.
Wheel of Fortune, yeah.
And he became this huge tycoon. And then after he was divorced, as you know, he was bearded by Eva Gabor. He never came out of the closet, and he was very right-wing. But when he did, various of his employees said, wouldn't it have been so good for the gay community and gay rights had someone as nationally known and liked as Merv Griffin had just been honest and not hidden behind Eva Gabor?
Yeah.
But that's what happened.
Well, and you would think that he was, at that point in his life, financially secure enough that even though there would have been some kind of a backlash, the reality was it didn't matter. But I think he enjoyed the fame and everything. You know, I met him one time at the Beverly Hilton Hotel.
Oh, yeah, which he owned.
Right. He owned the Beverly Hilton. I was there because at the time I worked for Sony Pictures, and we had a suite after the Golden Globes for a Golden Globes party for the movies and TV shows that were nominated that year at the Globes. And so I went early to set up. And I got up to the room. I was told at the front desk that the room was open because they were still working on it and setting it up. And I went up there, and the door was locked, and I couldn't get in. And so I started to go back, and here comes Merv Griffin with two people, aides on either side of him, and he's like, everything okay? And I was like, I'm here with Sony, and I was told the room was unlocked, but it's not. So I was going to go down and get the key. And he's like, oh, nonsense. I'll let you in. And then he goes, let him in. And they scurried around and they let me in. He goes, let's take a look at your room. And he ushered me into the room, and he looked around. And then he goes, I'm going to make so much money tonight. And walked out.
Oh, really? Yeah, really. He was very into money. And, eventually he and Donald Trump had a feud because they were both real estate tycoons.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump, as you know, had a show that flopped, and that's in the book, too. I mean, in these sidebars, we talk about shows that were meant to be huge hits and flopped. And another one that everyone thought would be a hit would be Monopoly, based on the board game and produced by Merv Griffin. And the host of that was Peter Tomarken, best known for Press Your Luck. And he was a very handsome young host, and he'd come out of the fashion industry. Apparently he was heterosexual, but he worked for Women's Wear Daily. Well, the thing is, Merv Griffin apparently over-flirted with Peter Tomarken, so that put a strain in the relationship. And the other thing is, Monopoly's logo or mascot is Mr. Moneybags, that little man with the top hat. They hired a female midget to be inside the costume for Mr. Moneybags. And the rule was you're not supposed to speak to this person. And Peter Tomarken, who was friendly, would just say, hello, how are you doing to her? And he was told, this is a non-entity. We do not wish to hear a female voice. This is Mr. Moneybags. He doesn't speak. And Peter said, well, I thought the days of slavery were over. So that was another clash. So finally, Merv Griffin fired him as host of the upcoming Monopoly show, and sort of in revenge, instead of hiring another host to host it, he hired a contestant, and it flopped anyway.
Well, there you go. Well, so many dishy stories are in your latest book, Bose. I hope everybody picks it up.
Me too.
And like Romaine, learn something about the history of game shows.
I've learned a lot of things already.
Well, that's the thing. I wasn't a big game show buff by any means. I mean, we've all grown up with certain game shows we watched,
Sure.
and certain ones we still like, but I had no idea. And the title is apt. The publisher chose it, Game Show Confidential, because there are so many things where you say what, and also sexual things, and like how a serial killer got on the dating game, but the woman, the bachelorette, refused to go out with him, although he won, because she said he's giving off a terrible vibe. And before he was on the show and after he was on the dating game, he murdered different women, 3 or 4 or 5 women total. It's all in the book.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Oh my
A lot
God,
of
that
crazy
is
things like
crazy.
I know. So many crazy things out there. Well, Bose Hadley, thank you so much for joining us again. It's always great to catch up.
It
And
is.
congratulations on your latest book.
Well, thanks so much, guys. Thank you.
Absolutely. Our thanks to Bose Hadley for being with us, author of 29 books, including the brand new Game Show Confidential, available everywhere fine books are sold as of May 1st. So pick up a copy and learn a little something about game shows. You're listening to Derek and Romaine.
Can't get enough of the show? Follow them on Twitter at DNR Show or like them on Facebook.
And don't forget to tell your friends to subscribe to DNR 2.0 at DerekandRomaine.com.